Hi, welcome back to Therapy Designs. If you're new to this channel, my name is Kelly and this channel is all about creating print-on-demand designs using Canva. So if that is something that you're interested in, please hit like and subscribe and stick around. Okay. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to create this design right here from scratch using only Canva. It is a little bit of a longer video, but if you stick with it, hopefully you learn a few cool techniques, and it gives you a template that you can then go ahead and use for future designs to scale out. And so it's definitely worth the time. If this is something that you would like to learn how to do, please do stick around. So I am on Canva's homepage. We're going to go ahead and start with custom size. I will pick a 4500 by 5400 pixels, and so we will start with that. I will go ahead and select a black background for this. So I'm just going to go ahead, hit background color, and go with black. Now today's design it's a little tough one to make, but once you make it, it's a great one for scaling out. So it kind of creates a template that you can then use for all sorts of other designs, whether you're scaling out the same style or just using it as a template for other things. So it's going to be one of the really popular sort of circle style designs that have text in it. This is going to be a Christmas style one. So the first thing that we do when we do this is we're going to start with our circles, and everything we're going to do centered so that it's easy to find where center is, and then from there, when it's all done, we can group it together, resize it, move it, whatever we need. So I'm going to start with my circles. So I'm going to go up to elements, and what you're going to look for is usually a circle outline, and we want a circle outline that we can crop. And so if it doesn't give you the ability to crop, it's not a good one. It does need to be pretty thin, because as you blow it up, we don't want the border to be too thick. I do want it to be a nice solid, so I don't want it to have any gaps in it or be rough. So for this, we're just looking for that sort of perfect circle design. Something where you can change the color is great. One like this one here I can show you is cool because it allows you to use two different colors to blend. So if we're doing a colored design, that's great. If you're just doing a regular white design, then that wouldn't matter. I can also hit see all on this because it's going to give me other versions that allow me to do the same thing. And what I'm looking for is one that's a little bit thinner. So maybe not that one. Is that the same thickness here? That one looks a little thinner. Let's see if I got any other ones that are even thinner. That one looks really good. So that one's nice and thin, but this one's not letting me change the color. So I may need to play just a little bit to sort of find what works best. But typically something like this would be pretty good. It does have a little bit of a thicker border than I'd like, so I might still look for one that's a little bit thinner than that. I did find one the other day that I liked, and I saved it in my recently used, so I'm just going to go ahead and go to my recently used and find the one that I just saw, which was right here. So again, same idea, only it's a lot thinner, so that's going to work better for this. So the first one, circle, is going to go right smack there. And I can go ahead and select my colors too. So let's say I want sort of a white and then more red for Christmassy, let's say. And I can make it a dark red, a deep red, whatever I like. So I could do something like that. It has to sort of a blend. So if you went with like a red and a green, that might not look so good. So for example, if I did red and green, now it's kind of getting brownish. So I do like to use a color and a white, I think usually will look best. And so something like that. And depending on where I want it to fall, I can always, well, I guess I can rotate it so that the white moves around in the circle. Kind of hard to see how that's going, but yeah, something like that. And so you can play with where the white is and where the red is and something like that. But once you get your circle how you want it, that's the first step, and make sure it's centered in your page, and it'll give you those sort of hash lines when it's centered. That is perfect. That is what we're starting with. So the first thing we're going to do then is hit Control D because I want to duplicate it. When we duplicate it, it's going to move it slightly off of centered. So what you're going to do is, again, make sure it's centered in the page. And so that's how we can make sure that everything is right on top. I actually don't want to have this rotated though, now that I'm thinking about it, because I want to be able to crop top to bottom. So forget that rotation for now. And let me get both of them rotated back to neutral there. There we go. So no rotation, because what I want to be able to do at this point would be to double click. It should give you little white borders. That's how you know it's croppable, and to be able to crop it down to where I want it. And so for this one, I'm just going to roughly do this. Think of it as, here's a top line for that one. And then I'm going to do the next one, and I'm going to crop bottom to top like that. To make these a little bit bigger so that I get an actual gap here. And so that's how you end up with a gap. Now what I want for this design is actually for the gaps not to be straight across, which is, a lot of designs will just have one even gap straight across, but you've probably seen ones where there is like a big letter here and then it comes down a little bit, and so it's not perfectly even. The way that we handle that then is we have to create this into quarters. So instead of 2 designs halves, now we have 4 design quarters. So again, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna hit Control D, and I am gonna have to try to line it up perfectly again, which may be tough because it's not a full circle anymore. So if you're having trouble lining it up, you can go ahead, drag it out to a full circle, then line it up, and then crop it down again. So different ways that we can go about doing that to make sure it's perfect. But once I have it lined up, I double click, and this time what I would do would be crop sort of right to left like that. And then if I wanted to pull that down, for example, now you can see how I've made it longer there, and now I can play with it. And now I can see how I can make different versions. So it can be higher here and shorter there. And so I would do the same thing again now. Go ahead, hit Control D. I'm gonna have to try to line that up so that it is perfectly centered. Again, I'm gonna go ahead and do quarters, right? So for this quarter, I could bring it down here. And then for this one, I would need to come in, and there you go. And so you can see how I've now created different gaps. And so that is one of the techniques that I'm going to show you here. We're going to have to do it again, by the way, for a center circle. So this design gets a little bit complicated with the circles and then the text in it. But again, so once you make it, you have a good template that you can then use going forward for other designs. That's a lot easier to work with from that point forward. And so this one, again, if I wanted to make it an all white circle too, I could pick any of these and just make it white, and I could make all of them white too. So this gives the most versatile, you know, ability you have to create different designs. So I am going to put some text here, and this design is going to say, in my sassy elf era. So it is a play on all of the in my whatever era style designs, and it's also going to be a play on the elf one. So you may have seen year after year where it says, you know, the mommy elf, the sassy elf, the grumpy elf, the drunk elf. I mean, you can obviously scale that out tremendously. There are hundreds of those. The teacher elf, the nurse elf, put any word elf. So I've seen a lot of those. There's tons of those. So what we're going to do is we're just going to sort of cross niche the two. And so I'm going to put in my sassy elf era. And so that's what that's going to be. So why don't I pull up some text boxes here so I can sort of see where everything's going to go before I put that center line in. So I'm going to have 2 text boxes. So one is going to be here-ish for that hole, and I'm going to pull up another text box, and it is going to be sort of here-ish for this hole. And I'm going to put, it's going to say in my up here. This will say sassy elf, and then era will be down here. So this word here is going to be sassy with a capital S, sassy, and it is going to be pretty big, obviously. And then this one's going to say elf. It's a much smaller word, but it is going to go, obviously, more over here, and it would kind of come out of the circle there. So you can see how that's going to look. So I want to pick a font. Now I did take a lot of time looking through different fonts. I'm looking for a font that has a very large uppercase letter. So obviously take your time, look for those, but I wanted a big bold uppercase. And so the one that I came up with that I thought was best here, there was a couple of them, but Letterhead, which I think I did get from Creative Fabrica. Yeah, there we go, Letterhead. This is one I did get from Creative Fabrica, but what you'll see is it's got a huge first letter. And so I really liked that. So Sassy, when I do it this way and have it just sort of come out that way, it is gonna look really good, something like that with the big S. And what you can already see is I can take this and I can bring it up just like that. And I can take this bottom corner here and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm going to bring it down there. And so that already looks really good there. And then for this one, I decided to go with a different font. You can do the same font, but I thought the E was gonna cut into this first one, so I didn't want this to be as large. So for this one, I went with another one that I did get off of Creative Fabrica, and this font was called, let me see, Hero, here it is, Hero Beam Regular. And so I did like this one, and I think I had an inline version. That's my inline version. And so something like that looked pretty cool, and it's gonna come off sort of the bottom there. So maybe I make it a little bit more like that. And so again, I can take this top one and bring it down. And now I can take this bottom corner, oops, might even have to send that to the back. Once we start getting a lot of layers, it gets a little bit trickier. And crop that down. And so now you can see I've sort of created the beginnings of the design, and so you can see how that is now going to go. Now we're going to go ahead and create the inner circle and put some fonts in there, and then we can start putting a little bit of decorations if we want to, and then we can do some of the elf stuff. And then we might have to do some fine tuning and tweaking and all of that. So let's go ahead and we're gonna pick this circle again. So I still have this up. I can hit my circle again and close that now. And let's go ahead and decide how big we want the center circle to be. And once you decide how big you want it, make sure it's again centered. So maybe a little smaller than that, I want room for the words. So again, making sure that everything is perfectly centered in the page is the easiest way to make sure it's all lined up. So I like that there, and that there looks pretty good, right? So I'm going to do the same thing with the colors. I'll make that one white. I'll make that one red. There we go. And so those look pretty cool there. And then we're just going to repeat the same process, which means that I'm going to Control D, so I've got two. Right, make sure it's centered. And then we're going to crop. I'm going to crop up here. Boom. And then I'm going to take the bottom one and I'm going to crop it down. Sort of there. Boom. And then to make sure we get this area here right, now I'm going to have to do my quarters. So what I can do is I actually can just pull up the circle again, and that might be the easier way to do it, would just be to go ahead and do elements, pull up my circle again. I'd have to match the right size though. So I'd still have to center and then try to match the size, which is why I usually duplicate it. Let's see if that makes it any easier or harder. No, I think duplicating it is probably going to be the way to go to get the exact size. So let's just take it, hit Control D, because it's going to be the same size there. And then from there, I can play with my cropping. So I'm going to crop to here, and I'll bring it down to here. And that works. And then I'll do the same thing here. I'll hit Control D, try to make sure those are lined up. And then again, I'm going to go ahead and crop this one here, it will have to come way down. So I may have to might have to play with this a little bit to make that work, because this is a little lower than I'd like, but you get the idea how I can sort of play with it. And then I can take this one here and come up. So that looks pretty good, and I can play with it from there, but I've got my 4/4 in. And so now I can go ahead and put some more font in here if I want to. So I'll pull up another text box. Top one is going to say in my, and I am going to go with another font here. So the font I was choosing for this, it was going to be Holiday Christmas, which is another one that I did get from Creative Fabrica, just so you know. Holiday Christmas. Why is it not coming up? Awesome Christmas. That's a cool one too. I do sort of like Awesome Christmas. So I had a lot of Christmas ones that I got. Oh, there it is. Holidays Christmas. You know what? I think this one's a little wider. I actually think I like Awesome Christmas better. Let's go ahead and do with Awesome Christmas. That's nice. And so my Awesome Christmas, I'm going to try to center it there. Nice. I might space it out a little bit, because I want it to be a little bit longer. And again, I'm gonna try to center that in the page. If I can find my center point, there it is. And then I'm gonna go ahead and go to Effects, and I'm gonna curve it. And I want the curve to match the circle. So once I get my curve to match my circle, that's pretty perfect there. And then I can use my arrow keys, is what I'm using now, to bring it up so that it's centered. And so that looks kind of cool. I might want to space it out a little bit more. There we go. And so that's how I would get the top. Sassy Elf, and then I want era down here. So I'm going to hit T on my keyboard again. It's going to say era. I'm going to go ahead and use my Awesome Christmas regular that I used there. It's going to come down now. I want it to be pretty much the same size. So the top one's 435. I want the bottom one to be 435. So yeah, somewhere in there. I can put 435. Is that going to work? 435, perfect. I can put it right here. Again, I'm going to curve this one. Well, I'm going to do some letter spacing too, but Effects, curve. I want it to curve the other way now. Again, it needs to curve the same amount as the circle. Right now, I don't think I have this centered, so I might have to play with it a little, but let me get that. There it is. Centered. And up. I'm going to have to tighten my circle a bit. So again, back to my effects, I'm going to tighten that circle up a little bit. Nice. And so that looks pretty good there. Again, play with that spacing maybe a little bit more. Bring this up higher a little bit. And so you can kind of see how that's going. So I do like that quite a bit. What I may want to do, because this elf is a little bit lower than I want it to be, would either be to make the elf a little bit smaller, which I can do. That's one way I can do it. The other way would be to bring this whole thing maybe up a little bit more in the frame. I don't want it to be too high in the frame because I don't want the Sassy to hit that corner there. So maybe I like something a little bit more like that. So if I do that, now I can just go ahead and again, I'm just gonna move my circles so that they are where I want them. And that looks pretty cool. This one, I might bring it up a little bit. And then this one, again, want it to be lined up there. Not too shabby. Get this little dude. This little dude, I want it to come out and up, and this one. There we go. That works better for me. So I'm liking the way that that looks a little bit more. Yeah. So that's better. And you can see once I have all of these, it becomes easier to crop to the word. And so that's going to work a little bit better for me. So in my Sassy Elf era. And so now I just want to put some designs in here. So obviously I want something elf related. So I'm going to do the classic elf design with the hat and the feet, but I'm going to put it here inside this circle. And then I'm thinking maybe an ornament or a snowflake. It depends how I want to fill this space. And so we can sort of play with it there. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go and just search elf, or I can put elf hat, elf legs. Usually I can get a good combination right there. You can already see the traditional elf. And of course with this, if I wanted to, I can just, you know, cut him in half essentially. So take him, shrink him down, get it wherever I want it there. I kind of like that. So it looks like the hat is sitting on top of that S. And so that actually works pretty well there. I don't even have to cut them. Otherwise, I was just going to do the same thing where I duplicate it and put the hat in one place and the legs in another place. But that actually looks like it works pretty well how it is. I could, if I wanted to, I suppose, bring the legs closer so that they're kind of closer there. So I could still Control D and just go ahead and cut them in half like this and get the top one. Control D. No, I don't have to Control D, cut it in half. So now I got the top and the bottom as two separate pieces, and so now I can take the bottom part and I can go ahead and bring it up so it's a little bit closer. Boop. And play with the spacing there. So I like that in my Sassy Elf era. And I do want these to be a little bit lighter color. So right now everything's pretty dark. So I'm just going to go ahead and select some lighter colors for these. So that looks a little better there. I can do the same thing here and get this green to match now. And that looks a little bit better. I can also take my reds and make my red sort of match my circle a little bit better too, if I want it to match sort of more the red part of my circle. Again, so I'm just playing with colors here. And so now that's all matching a little bit better. I can keep my little yellow pom-pom, or I can make my little yellow pom-poms white too. If I wanted to make those white, that might look better. Something like that. And so that looks pretty cool. And then I want to kind of fill in some of these spaces here. So I was thinking about maybe having a snowflake, a hanging ornament, something like that. Let's start with some snowflakes. Oops. And it has to be pretty simple because it's going to be pretty small. So if it's too complex, you won't be able to see the detail. So go with something pretty simple. Honestly, this first one probably looks pretty good. It's nice and simple. I can make that in a nice white color. I can shrink it way down. And then what I could do would be sort of to put it there, something like that. I might even make it a little bit smaller so it's more like the size of the text. Again, when we're dealing with little itty bitty things, using the arrows on your keyboard to move them always works really well. Once I have it the size I want, I can hit Control D so that I can get a duplicate copy in the same size. And I can do that a couple of times so that I can go ahead and sort of get that there like that. And that looks pretty cool that way. I could try to put one here. I don't want it too close to the Sassy, so I'm liking the way that this looks so far. I can put some down here if I want to. Depends how much I want to fill this space. I'm going to use a little bit of some little star graphic things too there. Let's go ahead. I'm going to go with ornament. And I like some of the hanging ornaments there like that. I can use any one of those that might look good. Or I can pick an ornament that doesn't have a string and just add a string to it. Let me put Christmas ornament because it's not coming out. Oops. Christmas ornament. And so there we can see some fun ones hanging there. And I can pick any of these. Again, I want it to be something relatively simple. You know, that one's pretty easy and it allows me to change the colors there too. So that might be one that works well with this design because it's simple and I can change the color. And then what I can do is bring it here. And you'll see what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and center it. And then I'm going to go ahead and get that green to sort of match this light green here. I can keep that dark one there for the shadow. I'm going to go ahead and make that. I like more of a silver color. So let's go ahead and do more of a silver for the top. Something like that looks nice. And then I'm going to go ahead and make a little line because I'm going to have a string that it's going to be hanging from. So let's just hit L on the keyboard. L on the keyboard will pull up a line. I'm going to move it up here so I can see it really easy. And then I can round the ends if I want to. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to cover the ends. And I'm going to make it as thick as I feel like I need to for a string. Something like that looks good. It might want to be a little bit shorter there. Let me move it out of the way here. And then what we're going to do is take the line and we're going to rotate it vertically until I have it at 90 degrees. I've got my 90-degree line here. Sometimes you want to, lines can connect to things that you don't want. So I try to always work on my lines away from my design, get them oriented and the size I want roughly before I move them into the design so that they don't lock to any particular feature. So once I kind of have it the way I want it, then I can take it and I'm just going to sort of drag it right over here, something like that. And I may even zoom in so that I can see. I'm going to want this line to be centered in the ornament, something like that. And I want it so that it doesn't go out either end, because then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to send that line to the back, which you can do by hitting Control and the left bracket on your keyboard, and that'll send any layer to the back. And so now I've got that sort of looking like it's sort of hanging down like that. Looks pretty nice. I think I had that line vertical. Now it doesn't look vertical. Does it look vertical? I guess it is. I don't know, it just doesn't look vertical, but I guess it is. Okay, so far so good. Maybe a few more little decorations, maybe some diamond shape. So here's some easy diamond shapes that you can do, and of course you can change the colors on these too to whatever you want. Maybe I make them sort of yellowy or reddish or whatever. So we get some of those little diamondy things that are really popular. You see those a lot in designs lately. Something like that might work well. You can even get some that are a little bit smaller still. Sometimes I can get groupings like that's a good grouping there. So different ways. I can also just, here's another one. Those work good too. Oh, that one's going to let me change the color, so that might even be nice because I like the way that that is grouped. Where might that look nice? That might look nicer here. So that looks kind of cool, and I can play with the colors. I might even like the gold color. If I like the gold color, I can go ahead and match that with these two, just so that I get a little bit of some different colors in there if I wanted to. I could even go ahead and make the snowflakes a light blue or whatever, and so you can see at this point I'm just sort of playing around. Now I've seen designs where you get like the snowflake here, and then we just cut the line to the snowflake, and that's one way to do it too. Oops. I don't think we need to do that for this one because I've already cut it pretty cool with the lettering, so that might work. So now something else to go down here, something that might fill the space there nicely. So again, any sort of Christmassy thing that might work well. So let's go ahead and just put Christmas. And so let's see, so presents is a good example of one I might do. So gifts might work well at the bottom there. Here's a little thing of gifts. I don't think that's going to go with this style of design, but just so that you get the idea here, that's one thing I could do. I like some candy canes maybe, might look good. Santa, I'm looking for something to fill this spot here. So sometimes you just sort of have to look and see what you've got that, you know, is kind of nice that you think will work. And sometimes just more snowflakes or whatever. A different snowflake might work best. Holly might work well. Okay, so holly looks like it kind of fills that space pretty well in terms of the shape and simplicity, and again, I can take the colors and try to make them match however I like, so I can always still play with that and make it look cool. If that's a little bit too much in the way of the same colors, I can play with the colors a little bit and switch them around, but you can see how we can just sort of play with it from here. And again, once I get this all the way I want it, then it'll be really easy to go ahead and just, you know, edit it and scale it out. So that looks pretty cool. I'm just going to go ahead and stick with this, keep it simple. So in my Sassy Elf era, I'm going to go ahead now that I have this, and I'm going to group all of this together. So I can go ahead and left click anywhere outside of the design, so way over in the corner, and just drag over all of it, make sure I get all of it highlighted. At that point, I can group it together. Now it's one image, it's all grouped together. And now what I can do is go ahead and center it in the page, and make it whatever size I need it to be, something like that. Now what you want is for the circle to be centered. So right now you may notice that the S is going to pop out of the circle quite a bit more. So for the circle to be centered, it's probably going to look like it's off to the left a little bit more, but we do want that center of circle. And so here is the center of my design. If I want to make sure the circle is centered, an easy way would be to hit C on my keyboard. That will pull up a circle. I can make it roughly the same size as the circle below it. I can make it transparent. And now we can see that my design is not quite lining up. So my design would have to go over pretty far to the right to make it look centered. That's going to be pretty close to centered, and then I can just take the top circle and move it off. And so now what I have is the circle is centered, and that looks pretty good there, and it is ready to go on a t-shirt. And so I'm just going to go ahead and stick with it as is. You can play with it as much as you want and, you know, make it as detailed or as simple as you like, but that's the overall design of how you would go ahead and create something like this. And so I'm just going to go ahead and title it in my Sassy Elf era, and it is ready to go. And I'm going to download it. It is a transparent background PNG. Hit download, and at this point, I can upload it to any of the platforms that I want. So primarily I use Amazon Merch on Demand because it is the one with the largest profit margin by far. So everything goes up there, and everything goes up there first. And then when I have time, I uploaded it to the other platforms. So I did have people asking questions about, do I have to do anything to sort of upsize this or change the, you know, the DPI or anything? No, I literally download it exactly as you see it, and then I upload it to Amazon exactly as you see it, and it prints good. So anybody who's concerned about, you know, the quality of the designs made on Canva or whether or not I have to do anything to upsize it, I really don't. The only time I would make this design larger would be if I was printing it on something like a blanket. And then the only thing I would do is when I go over to the side where it says share and I go to hit download, I would just change the size right here. So right now it's at a 1. If I was to make that, let's say a 1.5, for example, now it's brought those pixels way up. Now it would be good to put on a blanket and it would print with great quality, but that is all I ever do. Otherwise, I just always leave this as a 1. I don't have to do anything else and it prints good. So anybody who has questions about that. I also do have a video on how things really print. So I did go over how some of the clipping masks print, how some of the splatter designs print, how transparency might print. And so if you haven't seen that, you can check out my channel and look for that video on how designs really look when they're printed, because I do have some questions that people have asked about that as well. So I hope you guys are doing well. Again, if you have any other comments or questions, drop it in the comment section below. I do try to get back to everybody as quickly as I can. I'm sorry this was another sort of long video. It did, obviously have a lot of steps and go into a little bit of detail, but whenever I'm making a design that I can then scale out, it's good to spend your time on the original. That way you've got a sort of good template for anything that you scale out going forward. And I really wanted to make sure that everybody understood it and all the steps. So thank you for sticking with it. And I hope you guys are doing well with your Q4, and I hope to see you again later. That's it for today's video. If you found that useful and would like to see more videos with helpful tips and tricks, be sure to hit like and subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of the weekly videos. As always, keep growing and stay creative, and we'll see you next time.